Okay, in this video we're going to look at entering equations in an OpenOffice document. Let's suppose we were typing in a lab report, and at some point we might want to say the quadratic equation looks like this. Now we want to enter just to show the quadratic equation in our document. And normally you might start typing something like ax squared or something like that. First we go up here and we have to insert from the main menu an object, and the object we're going to insert is a formula. And as soon as we do that, we get a, I'm going to have to move this screen over a bit. We get a window at the bottom of our document that allows us to type in a formula, and then there's a little reminder page box that sets up here. And if we click on any of these things, it tells us how to input these things. For example, if we want to type in a function or something like that, like a square root, we could see how to do that. And we're going to do that in just a minute. The one we'll probably use the most is this one, because we have a lot of x to some power, for example, or x with some subscript like that. So let's get started. We wanted to do the quadratic equation. What does it look like? So I'm going to type it in here, and the basic idea is ax, and you can see as I type, after a little bit, it'll show up here. And now we want to do squared, and it's actually pretty simple to do squared. We just do an up arrow, a caret sometimes it's called, ax squared like that. Okay, and then plus bx plus c equals 0. And just typing it in, eventually it appears up on top. I think the reason for the delay is that there's actually, in OpenOffice, there's a program that actually tries to interpret what you're typing and then turn it into a mathematical form like that. So at this point we've done that, and now I'm just going to come back up here and click, and that puts me back into document mode where I can type other things. I'll put a couple of blank lines after this. I'd like this to be centered, so I'll click on this again, put the cursor on the same line, and then come up here to the centering thing and put it in the center of the document. My video window here isn't showing the full width of the document, so this is the center. This is how a mathematical equation should be typeset in a lab report or any document for that matter. We don't mix them in with the text here. We put them in the center of the of a blank line itself so that it appears very cleanly like that. Now we're down here, and maybe we want to add that the solution of this equation is, and now again we want to not type an equation in the same line as the text. We want to make all of our math in separate lines like that. So the solution, as you probably remember from your algebra classes, is x equals minus b plus or minus square root, all that stuff. So let's see how to do that more complicated form in the same way as this. Again, I go up to the top and I click on the Insert Object Formula. All right, now we're looking good here. Once again, I get this little window here where the formula will appear. I get this reminder here, and I get this little place down here where I can type in the formula. So I know the solution looks like x equals, and now I'm going to put a fraction in. You kind of have to think in advance here. We want a fraction. We want something over something else. So if we look right here, we want something of this form, one thing over another. So if I just click on this, it'll remind me of what the technique is here. We're actually sort of typing in words that this little machine here interprets and puts the equation, builds the equation up on top. So the way we do a fraction is by putting one thing over another, and we just use the word over, just like if we were speaking this equation. And when you see this little bracket left, it's a less than sign and a greater than sign with a question mark. That's where the stuff you want to type is going to go. And notice that it's enclosed by curly brackets, so that allows me to put a complex expression or a complicated expression inside that, and it will treat the entire thing as what goes over this entire thing. So let's see how that goes. First we're going to want minus b. You'll see it eventually start appearing up at the top. And now we want plus or minus. So we could type plus or minus, but how would we do that? Let's remind ourselves by just going up here and clicking on this, and that tells us that the way this thing interprets plus or minus, you just type a plus, a minus, and then whatever goes here. So what goes here is going to be the square root of b squared minus 4ac. How do we write a square root? Well, if we went up here to functions and clicked here, here's the square root. This will remind us how to do a square root. So if I just click that, it'll put it right here. The way we do a square root is by typing sqrt, and then again we have these curly brackets, and we're going to put in what goes inside here. So I'll put minus, nope, not minus, b squared, remember it's up arrow like that, minus 4ac, there we go. And we'll see that it'll appear up here. So now it's looking pretty good. All we need is the denominator now, and that's the over part. So here on the bottom, I believe it's over 2a, right? That was how it goes. So now it's looking pretty good, and we're done. All right, so I'm going to click up here again and get rid of the window on the bottom. And once again, I want this to be centered, so I'll go over here like that. Now it's in the center of the page. So I want to add a few more lines to show you a few more techniques, but this is the general idea. Let's bring it back to the left-hand margin here. So let's look at subscripts, and a few other things. So here's subscripts. Suppose we want, again, I'll insert object formula. Suppose we want f equals x1 sub 1, so like I want like this. So for the subscript, to make a subscript like that, I just put a, I don't know what that's called, a bar on the bottom. I forgot, underscore, that's right, it's called underscore. Plus maybe x2 plus x3 plus f, let's say 0. So we're just making some complicated expression. And we see it like that, and it turns out just the way we've entered it here with that little underscore as the thing that makes it into a subscript. Now for a little extra technique, suppose we wanted to do several lines of equations. So it isn't enough to just hit enter. You can see after I hit enter, it doesn't make an extra line up here. We have to actually tell it to put a new line, and literally we type in the word new line. And when we do that, you can see that a new line appears. And generally I like to have several blank lines between equations like that. Let's try another thing here. Let's try, for example, a summation. If you've ever been in statistics class, you do this a lot. The sum of something. Let's say we have the sum of forces, we'll see this later on in the course, but the sum of forces in the y direction, let's say. And that's going to equal, and now we'll put, let's say it's just something called t, some variable called t, I'm just making this up, t times the sine of theta. Okay, so let's say we're multiplying some variable called t times the sine of an angle called theta. You can see it appears up here where the word theta is spelled out, but we'd really like to have the Greek symbol for theta there. And the way that works is by typing out the word for the letter, the Greek letter, but in front of it putting a % sign. And once you do that, it interprets it as a Greek symbol like that. Notice that I could change this to an alpha and leaving the % sign there, and eventually it turns into that, or beta, whatever I want, whatever Greek symbol I want up there. So that's another way to do that. There are a number of other things you can do with these. Again, if I go back to the regular document, just click, it gets me out of equation mode, and again, I'd like that to be centered, so I can put it over like that. As a sort of summary of this, here's a look, whoops, I don't want that there, I want this. So here's a summary of what we did to insert a formula into an equation into a document. You just position the cursor on the line where you want it, and then do an insert object formula, and that brings up a new box like we saw down at the bottom, and then we type in the equation, and then we can double click on the formula in the document to get the hint toolbar that we saw before, the little window there. All right, I'm going to scroll down and show you some of the things you can do here. The word new line gives you a blank line. A over B, as we saw, produces something divided by something else. Square root of a will give us this, and the sum will give us this summation symbol. By the way, this is a little mistake here. I think I should change this. This really should be a curly bracket like this, If I just put round parentheses on there, I would get this thing here, but I would get, or I think I would get the round parentheses inside the square root sign around the a. So by using these curly brackets, and you'll see it down, you can see it right here, the curly brackets are used to enclose more complicated terms like 3 plus square root of b. We could do something like this. Okay, and I think there's one more thing here. So shortcuts, we saw this as well. If we want to put an exponent, we just do x up arrow to whatever exponent we want. A subscript is an underscore there, and that puts it on the bottom. And again, you can get a Greek letter by just putting a % in front of the name of the Greek letter that you want. So that's pretty much it for OpenOffice. At first, I thought this was much more complicated than Microsoft Word's equation formula setter, typesetter. But once I got used to it, it's actually much faster because you don't have to keep picking your hand off the keyboard and putting it on the mouse to select things. So that's the story, and I hope it works for you.